After 32 years, I finally got the letter I'd been waiting for. It was a bit smaller than I expected, but I managed to read it. Dear Mrs. Amelia, we're pleased to inform you that you have a place at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I think you know how the rest of the letter goes. Welcome to the final part of my Gryffindor Common Room diorama video. Today I will show you how I furnished the room, how I made the tapestries and little knick-knacks, and how we finally got the fire and the lights going. I think that after my son, this might be my best mini project yet. I also decided to turn this into a Hogwarts series. Let me know which house I should make next. As usual, there will be some baby chatter throughout the video, because I'm a busy mom of a very cute 1-year-old boy. This is where we left off. In part 1, I built the walls, the floor, the windows, the doors and the fireplace. If you missed that video, you can find the link in the description. Let's make the table by the window. I cut out 2 pieces of balsa and filed them down a bit. I love the way the dust looks in this light. I magically painted both sides brown, but you can use acrylic paint as well. I shook a few skewers long enough to turn them brown. I made sure to cut the pieces evenly. For the sake of this tutorial, I used the Muggle method of cutting, and let's take a moment to appreciate my measuring skills after almost 7 years of making miniatures. I really don't know what happened here. Next time I'll just use magic. I glued the supports to the tabletop. I multiplied and colored some chopsticks for the table legs and attached them to the tabletop. I used pieces of popsicle sticks and some balsa to make more decorative parts. I drew a floral pattern, but I didn't really like it, so I only kept it on one side. I added some stain marks and other imperfections to make the table look more aged. Lastly, I varnished it. I cut out some of my printables to make miniature books and notes. I have detailed tutorials on how to make books, so I will link them below. I also showed my method in part 1 of this series. One of the books I just conjured up magically. This is my new favorite method of making miniature books. I painted it to make it look aged. It was time to put everything on the table. This is a table where we Gryffindors actually study from time to time, or plan our Quidditch tactics, so I added some books, parchment and quills. I showed the method for making quills in my Gryffindor cupboard tutorial. I just used paper and some beads. Time to perfect the windows. I cut out some pieces of balsa and painted them black. I also had a small piece of metal, which looked a bit like a door handle. I actually warmed up to the windows and decided to keep them as they were. I always imagined one of the windows would open though, so I decided to make it look like it does. Enjoy some baby chatter. My little house elf came to inspect the job at some point and noticed that I glued the handle too high. I ended up gluing the handle a bit lower so that it would actually be possible to reach, although I did not film that part. I made shallow cuts along the edges so that the windows would stick better to the walls. I used paper glue. Please ignore this piece of wire that keeps moving. I think one of my spells went wrong. Time for the armchair. I have a tutorial for a similar armchair and a sofa, so I won't go into too much detail, but I'll quickly show you how I made it. The base is made of cardboard, to which I glued some corduroy fabric. Then I added some cotton, which I dyed red. I wanted to make it look like button tufting, so I made 4 holes. I made a knot in a piece of embroidery thread. I put a needle threader through the hole. Then I took one end of the thread, put it through the threader and pulled it through the hole. It was a bit difficult to film, so forgive me if it's not very clear. Then I repeated the steps with the other end of the thread. I tried threading 2 ends at once, but they were too thick, which is why I did it one by one. Here I'm showing it on another hole. It was very challenging, but somehow I managed not to break the threader. I left the ends loose, but I secured them to the armchair with some paper glue. I colored the buttons so that they would match the armchair better. I added cotton to the back and to the armrests. Then I made 2 pieces for the front of the armrests. I just colored some cardboard. I added cotton to the bottom of the armchair. I made a cushion out of cardboard and some fabric, and I wrapped it in the same cotton. I decided to add some decorative thread. This method of painting was recommended to me by Nessie from Nessie Monster Crafts. I will link her channel below, she makes really cute miniatures. I glued the thread on using tacky glue. I also decided to paint my sofa and the other armchair as well. I will link the tutorial for them below. Time to make the little table that goes in front of the fireplace. I cut out small pieces of cardboard and made tiny cuts at the corners. Then I magically turned them brown. I took some skewers and used a cutting spell to make the legs, since I'm not very good at the muggle way of cutting. I turned them brown as well, and glued them to the tabletop. Afterwards, I added another tabletop and it was finished. I had this newspaper in my printables, so I added that to the table. Let's make some chairs. I cut out a double piece of cardboard for the seat and multiplied it using a simple spell. Normally, I would use a coloring spell for that, but I know it's not the easiest one to master, so I'm also showing you the Muggle way. I filed the seats down a bit. Somehow I managed to cut the leg pieces evenly again. I colored them and glued them to the seat with paper glue. I used coffee stirrers for the backrests. I made the side pieces out of skewers. Making miniatures is really tiring and time-consuming, so I decided to cheat and conjure a few more out of thin air. I also decided to make 2 more chairs. First, I turned some cardboard into something that resembled wood. I used skewers again for the legs and the backrest. I sneezed and the pieces somehow glued themselves together. I'm still working on controlling my powers. I painted the wood some more and used some linen to decorate the back. For the rectangular table, I used cardboard and balsa because I wanted it to be very sturdy. This is the table where all the Gryffindors party, so it needs to be durable. If you're a Gryffindor too, you probably know how we celebrate every Quidditch victory, so I think I don't need to explain any further. I sanded it a bit. I made the legs out of chopsticks. Listen to that satisfying snap. I used coffee stirrers to make the side supports. Then I added the legs. I painted the table with watered down acrylic paint and it was ready. For the tablecloth, I cut out a piece of red cotton and frayed the edges a little. I folded it so it would drape naturally. I decided to make a fake lamp for the table, so I connected some earring pieces together and added a bead and a metal piece on top. I painted the base gold. I made a bowl of magical jellies by putting some plastic granules into a small plastic piece that looked like a bowl. I also printed out a tiny picture of a castle. I made a broken glass out of a pen cap. I didn't film it because it was a bit dangerous to make. I also had a bag of Bertie Bott's beans, which I made from beads a long time ago. Lastly, I added a metal cap from a pen to serve as another bowl. Time to make a smaller, cafe-style table. This is where we hang out when we want to play board games with a friend or two. I made the tabletop the same way as before. For the legs, I cut out some cardboard, multiplied it and shook the pieces long enough until they finally stuck together. Then I sneezed and multiplied the leg pieces by accident, but that was actually helpful because I needed more anyway. I cut a piece of spool to make the middle part of the leg. I painted the pieces brown and glued them together. You might hear ghouls in my attic, sorry about that. I think a goblin decided to visit us at this time. I wanted to add some trim, so I drew it by hand on a piece of paper. I glued it along the edge and painted the table a bit more. Then I varnished it. Look at that beautiful winter light. I decided to make mini checkers, so I printed out a tiny checkerboard and glued it to a piece of balsa, which I painted brown. To make the checker pieces, I simply cut up some toothpicks, losing half of them in the process, and having to find them before my baby ate them. I painted them and added another layer of balsa underneath the board. I had a tiny metal bowl and some resistors, so I made another game out of them. Can you think of a name for it? If you invent the rules, you will get 10 points for your house. Lastly, I added a miniature book. I was debating whether to keep the chest of drawers I made some time ago or to build a new one. You voted in my poll for a new piece, so here we are. I will link the tutorial for the old one below. I cut out some cardboard and balsa, painted the balsa pieces brown and glued them to the sides. I strengthened the structure with a piece of a popsicle stick. I added the top and bottom parts, made from doubled balsa pieces, measuring as I went. I made faux doors using balsa as well. I snapped the pieces into place. These doors will not open because I have yet to discover a method of making tiny hinges that will look good in 1 to 20 scale. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. Then I added wood knots with a marker. I made the door handles out of a toothpick. Lastly, I added faux hinges made from cardboard. I painted it a bit more. I placed my Mimbulus Mimbletonia plant on top. I will link a tutorial for that below. I also added a fake book. Time to make the tapestries. I had been putting this part off because I had no idea how to make them, but somehow they turned out exactly the way I imagined. Magic? I cut out several pieces of cotton, but ended up using only 2. I stained the fabric with brown and red acrylic paint. I mixed it with a little water and a tiny drop of paper glue. Apparently this helps the paint stick better, while keeping the fabric soft. I traced the outline of some trees and animals with a pencil and filled it with acrylic primer. The primer helps the colors stay vivid. I drew some trees, animals, plants and people, trying to keep the style somewhat medieval. Then I used sandpaper to remove excess primer and help the fabric fold more naturally. It was time to add some color. I used markers and crayons, trying to stay within a warm color palette. If you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a thumbs up. You can also say hi in the comments. I love reading them. Your lovely comments on part 1 of this project really made my day. Here I'm already coloring the second tapestry piece. It was very time consuming, but I loved the process. I sanded the wallpaper some more to make it even softer, and I trimmed the edges. I added a little more color so the two pieces would match better. Then I folded the edges slightly and glued them in place. I attached the tapestry to the wall using magic and tried to shape the folds naturally. For the notice board, I just printed a cork texture and glued it to a piece of cardboard. To make the frame, I cut out some balsa pieces and turned them brown. I glued on some ads, drawings and timetables from my printables. I decided to make tapestry holders out of earrings. I removed the spring, bent them and multiplied them using willpower, but pliers will work fine as well. I made this broom a long time ago, but it needed a makeover. I used a twig, twine and thread to make it. I sanded it down a bit. Then I gave it a little trim. I painted it brown. The acrylic paint gave it some shape as well. I used varnish to make it really shiny. Lastly, I wrapped some wire around the bristles to make footrests. Time to make real working lamps. I connected some metal pieces and plastic tubes I had lying around. I also made a candle using a resistor and some earring pieces. I wanted to make sconces as well. I used pieces of earrings, beads, and resistors for that. The resistors are just for decoration. I painted the sconces gold. I'll show you on two examples how we made the lamps actually work. I cut two wires to about half a meter length and put them through a hole I made. I wanted to attach a diode. My husband snapped off the metal legs from the diode so that only small fragments were left. He scraped off the protective layer from the wire. Then he added some flux so that the solder would hold better. He added solder to the wires and the diode. He added some more flux for an even better hold. Lastly, he soldered the pieces together. I'm really bad at soldering, so my husband always does it for me. If you want, one day we could make a more detailed tutorial on that and the electronic circuit needed. Then we glued the diode to the lamp. For the candles, we used an even smaller diode. The process was pretty much the same, just more frustrating. Here you can witness sleep deprivation kicking in. Oh, the joys of parenthood. Just kidding, we love it. My husband used super glue to attach the diode to the candle. We made the sconces the same way. One of them is a triple sconce made by twisting 3 wires together. In total, there were 3 sconces, 2 single ones and 1 triple. We had to drill holes in the walls and some furniture pieces to let the wires through. Don't worry, we were wearing masks and the baby was safe in the other room. This lamp I actually made some time ago. I will link the tutorial for that below. My husband made a simple electronic circuit. It's total sorcery to me, so I won't go into detail, but if you'd like, we could make a tutorial about it in the future. The battery case is from the Fireplace. I will show you how we made the fire soon. I glued my Hogwarts letter to a drawing desk I made some time ago. I'll link the tutorial for that as well. I also added the quill I made in my Gryffindor cupboard video. I will link a tutorial for this magical chest as well. Inside it I put a tiny Harry Potter book I made a few years ago. The tutorial for this desk was actually the very first video I ever posted on YouTube. I'm so happy I finally made a home for this piece. I'll be making homes for all my furniture pieces. I'm thinking of turning it into a series, so stay tuned for future videos. I don't have a tutorial for this shelf because I made it before I even started this channel. I filled it with some books and this strange object made out of a hairbrush bristle. Whoops, reparo. I made some rubbish bins and baskets for wood. I used plastic containers and cups, which I painted with acrylic paint. I added some embroidery thread to give them more texture. I put some twigs in the basket and some rubbish in the bins. I made a few knickknacks for the fireplace. I printed a small picture and used pill packaging to make the glass. I also made some candles out of earring pieces and brush bristles. I added some tiny artwork I made a long time ago. There's a tutorial for it in my shorts. To make realistic looking fire, my husband bought a fake battery operated candle. He took out the mechanism and put it inside the fireplace. I then painted it red and played around with some twigs and pillow stuffing until I was happy with the result. I used some lace which I painted black and silver to make the fire screen. Time for the final assembly. For the purposes of this video, I'm showing the assembly all in one place, but in reality the process was gradual. There was a lot of moving things around and adding wires, knickknacks and decorations. I hope that's clear, and sorry if some things seem a little out of order. If I haven't shown how to make a particular piece, you'll find the tutorial linked below. It makes me so happy to finally see the room coming together after so many months of work. I added some balsa pieces to the edges and painted them brown. I glued red fabric to the outside of the diorama. Time to hang the paintings. This picture I simply printed out, but the rest of them I painted myself. I also made the frames. This painting fell off and landed in exactly the right spot. This place is already magical. When I was little, I used to dream of being at Hogwarts. And of course, Gryffindor was my favorite house. After all this time, I am finally here. Only in miniature form. Let's see what the finished room looks like. Thank you so much for watching both parts of this project. If you enjoyed this one too, please give it a thumbs up, say hi in the comments, and subscribe if you haven't already. Lumos. The Hogwarts series is just beginning. I'll be back soon with a new miniature. Let me know in the comments which house I should build next.